Hi there, greetings and salutations. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you might celebrate. I guess I should be celebrating today because I come into the studio like I always do as a broadcast professional and one who has obligations that I uphold. And I look to my left and what do we have here? Derek's just, I have no idea what's going on, Derek. So the latest is that Derek is under the weather, quote unquote. Come on. But you look good on the Zoom, Derek.
I actually feel fine today. I had like a quick 24-hour-ish stomach bug where I threw up probably like a dozen times yesterday. Actually, it was like, remember Matt Hasselbeck all those years ago in that Thursday night game against Houston that they won back when the Colts used to actually win division games? And he said to me yesterday, but no attic or basement today. But as a precaution, we decided yesterday, because I was still throwing up when I texted the guys and raking everybody that we were going to do this.
We have the ability to mute your audio here, which thankfully they did during part of your explanation there. Just a simple, I was a little under the weather. Feel better today. That's it. That's perfectly sufficient. That's all we need. That's all we need.
Well, we're all adults. Like, we've all kind of been through it where you have not only watery stool and all of that, and it's gone now. That's the thing that is good. It is gone now. It is out of my system. So everything is up and up. Happy to be here.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that it's out of your system. Here's the thing. When it comes to the system of the playoffs for the NFL, Derek, the Colts might be out of the system. That was to quote Jim Mora, that was a disgraceful performance. In the biggest moment, in the biggest game of the year, frankly, they dropped the ball. And I don't even mean that to be funny because of the Jonathan Taylor play. Every situation that faced the Colts on Sunday in Denver, they flunked the test. And now as a result, yes, they still have a chance to win 3. And matter of fact, the schedule is favorable for them to finish 9-8. That puts them still within shouting distance. But at the same time, you almost at this point, you may be better off just saying, you know what? It's done. Let's rebuild for next year and see where the chips fall.
Yeah, you're talking about probably a 60 to 70% swing on their postseason chances, right? Had they beaten Denver, they'd probably be looking at 65, 70% to make the playoffs, and now they're looking at, 10%? And they're lucky that they have a 10% chance. Jake, I had bought $5 Pacers tickets through their Gold Friday deal, and it was a random draw game, and it just happened to be the Sunday afternoon game. So I was with James at Gainbridge Fieldhouse while the game was going on for a large majority of it. And I was, checking scores just like I always do, and it's a 13-10 game, right? And then suddenly, the concessions, I get James popcorn, whatever else. 20 minutes later, I look back at the score, and I'm like, what happened? How did this turn into a 31-13 game? It snowballed, right? It really snowballed there in that fourth quarter with just, the Taylor play obviously is a disaster, but then you compounded that disaster with the A.D. Mitchell pass play, which is and we could talk more about that, I guess. It's a position that Shane Steichen should have never put A.D. Mitchell in the first place. I think that's where the failing was. But honestly, Jake, you know what? In this lost decade, because that's basically what this is now. This is a lost decade. 2015 to a lost decade. Very likely only 2 playoff appearances, very likely only 1 playoff win, and we already know 0 division championships. The Colts always lose this game. They have lost this game repeatedly. They lost it in 2015 to Houston at home against Brandon Weeden in December. Osweiler in 2016 at home to Houston, division on the line in both of those 8-8 seasons. They lost it in 2019 when they could have won the division or put themselves in the catbird seat when Tennessee came in here and blocked a field goal and rallied late for 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns and won that game, and the Colts season dissolved after that. We know what happened in 2021. I don't need to rehash that with the Raiders and that disaster in Jacksonville. And they did it last year. A win-and-in game against Houston, Trey Sermon, Gardner Minshew, whatever else. They always lose this game. And that's what an 8-9 for the better part of the last 10 years.
So here's what we know. The Colts still have a position to be in position, okay? And to your point, Derek, this is same old song and dance. It's a repeat of the last decade, to your point. And it's frustrating because there is a danger in the NFL of being stuck where they are. it's like being in a mud pit and you're just spinning the tires and mud is flying all over the place. By the way, do you like my Bailey & Wood pen? Thank you to Bailey & Wood, who is the title sponsor of this program. Bailey & Wood and Mike Wood and the gang down on the south side of Indianapolis, but now multiple locations throughout central Indiana, absolutely have been fabulous to us, and we are proud once again to represent Bailey & Wood and carry their name on this program. But, Derek, the reality is that you're stuck in the mud and the mud's flying everywhere as you're spinning the tires, and that's what they're doing. They're spinning the tires. Because what do you do now? At the best, you finish 9-8. Okay, great. You're going to draft 17th or 18th. You're not going to make the playoffs by all account. Even if you make the playoffs, does anybody really expect them to win a playoff game? The danger here, quite frankly, is the fact that it just doesn't feel like there's any progress. You could say to yourself, because this year from the beginning, Derek, was all about the growth of Anthony Richardson. That's what this year was about, the growth of Anthony Richardson. But in reality, Anthony Richardson, at times, in tests, has shown well. He did not in Denver. But you're just not putting the pieces around him, I don't think, and you have no depth around him to even adequately know whether or not he is the guy that you go with beyond next year and moving forward. You basically are just completely resetting yourself now back to square one next season. You did not – if this year was about progress for that player, Anthony Richardson – not only for Anthony Richardson, but for the team as well, I don't know that you feel like you have gotten it to the level where you're doing anything other next year than starting right back from square one.
Yeah, and think about where they were last year. Obviously, losing a win-in game to Houston and just missing the playoffs was frustrating, right? But you could point to several things last year to be positive about. The fact that they lost Richardson for 85% of the year. You know, he only had, 4 starts last year, and you still scratched out a 9-8 season with Gardner Minshew. Had some great wins. You won in Baltimore, etc. You probably felt good about where they were coming back with Richardson in year 2, right? What do you point to from this season that you feel good about? The fact that you beat a couple of bad AFC East teams with last-second miracle rallies?
Derek,
you ate up all the dregs of the NFL that you went, what was it, 9-1? If we're to assume that they win these final 3 games against basically the 8 or 9 worst teams in the NFL, I mean, is that what you're hanging your hat on?
But here's the thing. Yeah, to answer your question, yes. What you have to hang your hat on is the fact that there were times this year, if you were looking for a positive, and you know me, Derek, I'm the eternal sun is always rising optimist, right? Look,
sure.
If you were to look at a positive, it would be the fact that there were times this year where the stakes were the game was on the line and Anthony Richardson arrived in that moment. Now, against bad teams, to your point, but still, if you were looking, then you would say, okay, that's progress. But the problem is, if you look at the play, like let's just say that they know Richardson's the guy, hypothetically, okay? Great. Next year and forward, there are too many positions where you're having to start back over again and recalibrate it all. You still don't have a tight end. You still don't know who, the receiving core is okay. Your running back room, okay, Jonathan Taylor is obviously a very good running back, don't get me wrong. But 2 years in a row now where I think he has cost them. Last year he cost them by, it would have been great if he was there in camp day to day working out with Richardson and getting that timing down, right? This year he makes that play in the biggest game, in the biggest moment. Sorry, he's a wonderful player and seemingly a nice kid, but he made a boneheaded play in that regard. Defensively, the corners, I think Chris Ballard, to his credit, and maybe we did see that they do have some talent in the corners and in the secondary, but they don't have the depth there I don't think that they need. And their pass rush, again, is one that they're just kind of, you're waiting for it to come together. Latu showed some moments, but at this point, Kwity Paye, Tyquan Lewis, I mean, there are a lot of guys that are just kind of mess. So you're constantly kind of rechurning all of the support cast around Richardson. It doesn't feel like at any point you're going to have a car that is running on all cylinders simultaneously, clicking along like we have seen in years past with this franchise.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Like look at the Denver and New England games, the last 2 games as kind of a microcosm, right? Where at times in the New England game, I mean, they were disastrous defensively. It was embarrassing how they were playing against Drake May and company. And then you turn around against Denver and you hold them to under 200 yards. You pick off Bo Nix 3 times. Like, if you would have told me that, if you would have handed paper and said, this is the Colts, Sunday against Denver. I would have thought that they won going away. But they can't get the offense to play well when the defense plays well, and they can't get the defense to play well when the offense plays well. And then I think the other thing that's plaguing the team, Jake, is that as much as we talk about the uneven quarterback play, because there's been a lot of uneven quarterback play, not just with Anthony Richardson and his tenure, but really going back the last 10 years, right? Your best and highest paid players they have to play at a high level all the time. I know that's an unfair expectation, but like they're not paying Jonathan Taylor to drop the ball at the goal line and rush for 1,100 yards when he doesn't catch and he doesn't block.
Right. That's the thing.
Like
I agree with that.
Yards for Jonathan Taylor. They need, the only two players that really, and I know that he had a rough game a couple of weeks ago, but really the only two players in this team that I think have performed at a consistently elite level are Quentin Nelson and DeForest Buckner. And I think he'll throw Kenny Moore in there maybe. Kenny Moore has had a great season as well. But you look at the rest of the guys that they paid. I mean, Julian Blackmon has not had a good season. Michael Pittman, God love him, with the injuries and everything. Like, I appreciate that he's a soldier. Nobody's scared of Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman Jr. he's a dime a dozen. You can find a bunch of guys who are second level wide receivers like that. And Jonathan Taylor has not performed to the level that he needs to perform at either. So, a lot of these guys that you rewarded, Zaire Franklin's had an up and down. He had a great game Sunday, but he's had an up and down season. A lot of these guys that you've rewarded have not consistently played at a high level, and I think that that's plagued them as well. And Braden Smith, another example, like I feel for him, whatever he's going through, but you have invested in that. And if he is not available for whatever the reason, whether it be injuries, whether something going on, again, I'm trying to be sensitive to that, but you invested in that. That is your investment. And if that investment doesn't pay off, it causes problems.
By the way, I've never noticed, I have noticed this before, but it's never been accentuated more than right now. Your forehead is massive. You have a huge,
yeah.
you have an 8 head. Like that's
yeah.
That we grow hair indie fella might be able to help you out. Cause it's like from here, like,
no, I mean, my hair, obviously I do have it has receded over the years, but like my hair is actually, for being, I'll be 42 in February. My hair is in decent shape. But yes, I do have the hairline has gone back a little bit, and I always had kind of a Peyton Manning-esque forehead. But like the overall package is strong.
What's that?
The overall package is strong.
Nah, I don't think so.
Multiple packages are strong when it comes to me.
Is Chris Ballard back next year?
Yes.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Should he be?
Yeah, Chris Ballard's back. Shane Steichen's back. Anthony Richardson's back. I can tell you right now, Jake, what is today? Today is December 17th. December 17th, where we sit today. Just watch. Colts are going to win these last 3 games against arguably the 3 worst teams in the NFL. Maybe throw the Raiders in there too, but literally like the Giants, the Jaguars, and Titans, they are horrifically bad. They're going to win these last 3 games because I don't think the Chargers are going to lose, and I don't think all these tiebreaker scenarios are going to come into play. They're going to go 9-8, and they're going to come back and say, see, we were close. And see, momentum going into the – and they're going to run it back. And you know what? With kind of where they sit with some of the contracts, Jake, as much as it pains me to say, I mean, I would love to just do a full reset here. I think they're stuck. I think that has to be the play because I'm wondering if that's your only play. It doesn't make sense to me. You know how I feel about Chris Ballard and his job performance. But it doesn't make sense to me to replace him and keep Steichen and Richardson and hire a new GM and hand him a quarterback and a coach. It doesn't make sense to me.
Here's the thing with Ballard. And I've been critical of Chris Ballard and hard on Chris Ballard, but at the same time, there are areas we have talked about that he has done, it's not totally void of positives. I mean, he's had some areas where he's done a really good job, other areas where he has not. But in defense of Chris Ballard, I tend to agree with you in the fact that because all we heard about when Ballard joined the Colts was, this is the guy. This is the rising star of the NFL. This is the guy that owners all salivated over the chance to try to get him as the general manager, and he is a well-respected pro scout in selecting talent. Knowing and understanding and selecting talent is one thing. Being able to put it together into the proper jigsaw puzzle is another. I don't think that Ballard is completely inept at either of those things. The problem is, I think he's – what's that?
No, me neither. I completely agree with you.
But he's been here long enough now, though, heading into season number 9, a playoff win, 8 games under 500. A divisional title has eluded them for a decade. And the reality is you are kind of stuck because who else are you going to get? I mean, I hate to say it that way. That sounds so terrible. Like, that sounds such a lazy cop-out. But I think it's a hard job, quite frankly. I think there are very few people that do it to the level. The bottom line is this, and I'm not saying that means that you accept mediocrity, but I think in this town with this franchise, we became so accustomed to seeing a decade's worth of elite-level play, primarily because of the quarterback. But obviously, Bill Polian was somebody from a salary cap standpoint that was very good at figuring out how to spend, say, 80% at 20% of his roster and then complement it in areas where you could mask guys that you had on minimum contracts. And he did it very well. And I think we became accustomed to thinking that, like, it was just easy. It's not just easy. That's not to make excuses for Chris Ballard, but rather to say, I don't think that this is the situation where you make a change of the GM and automatically you turn things around and you're right back to elite again. It's just not that easy.
No. Yeah, it's not that easy, but the thing is, Jake, like, you know, who you're going to get, you can only give somebody so much time, and if it's not working, it's not working.
Right.
You got to move on.
Well, like somebody said,
I
you could say to Chris Ballard, it doesn't mean you're a bad person, doesn't mean you're a bad guy. It's just right now you're not the right person for this job. That I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it, and I think they kick the can for another year. And a year from now, Derek?
Me too.
Is there any reason to believe that a year from now they're not 10-7, 9-8?
No, there's not. There's not any. And there's like a very small chance that suddenly the light bulb turns on for Richardson and things work. And I'm also I'm almost completely out on Shane Steichen now. I just think he's had about as bad of a year as you could possibly have. I really do. I don't like how he's handled virtually everything that has happened to the Colts so far this year. But again, going back to Ballard, Jake, it's a process versus result thing. Mainly, I am a process guy. I think you need to reward good process. And I think for the most part, people might not like to hear this. I think for the most part, Ballard's process is good. He drafts pretty well to well, right? He has traded well. He has not gone crazy in free agency, which I know drives people crazy. But for the most part, signing outlandish contracts to 29-year-olds usually is not a recipe for success, right? I wish he was a little bit more aggressive, but being over-aggressive in free agency isn't the play either. I think the process has mostly been right, but good process has to be followed by result, and the Colts don't have any results under Chris Ballard. That's the bottom line, and it's crazy because you go back to the previous regime where I think the process with Ryan Grigson was bad. You know what I mean? But you had good results. So now you've kind of flipped those two things, I feel like, with this regime. But, Jake, it doesn't take 9 years to turn around an NFL team. It doesn't take 9 years. It should not take this long. And it's taken way, way too long to shift this thing out of neutral.
Derek, my concluding point on the Colts would be this, which is what I said on the radio yesterday. When Chris Ballard took the job, in various times throughout his tenure as the general manager of the Colts, he has said that you can take risks with some players if they are of questionable character or background, so long as you have really good leadership that can then set a tone and set an example for said players. And that can you have to trust that culture, to use that buzzword. A.D. Mitchell is a guy that fell in the draft, that was available for the Colts in the second round because there were red flags about him, not like being, a bad character person, but just in terms of his work ethic, his commitment, etc. And the word was, or just kind of the overall mantra is, that's okay because we have veteran players that can show him the way. We are nearing the end of his rookie year. It has been one that has not really had any flashes at all. And they put him in a position, to your point, with that trick play that was a total disaster. You put him in a bad spot. But why would you trust him in that moment to make the right decision? When your leader, after the game, Shane Steichen said of Jonathan Taylor, he's our leader. Those things happen about dropping the football. If Jonathan Taylor's your leader and the biggest mistake in the biggest moment in the biggest game of the season is just one of those things that happens, then why in the world would we expect anything different for A.D. Mitchell than the red flags that caused him to drop in the draft to continue to show in terms of his inability to stay focused within a football franchise because the guy that he's supposed to be looking up to doesn't have the focus to carry the ball across the goal line? To me, that entire thing is the microcosm of everything that's wrong with the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, I just don't like how, again, I don't like how he's handled virtually everything that's happened in Shane Steichen this season. He looks like a guy that's just in over his head.
But what about
shocking?
Derek,
because I thought he was great last year. I really thought he squeezed every drop out of the Colts last year.
Okay, what about this? Would you agree that Anthony Richardson did show more sign of life after the benching than he did prior?
Yes.
Okay, so if that was, and I'm not saying it is, but if that was Shane Steichen's move, if Shane Steichen was alone on an island and said, I'm going to bench this kid and then bring him back to teach him a lesson and get more out of him, that worked, right?
Yeah.
So there is, if you're saying that he was void this year of Shane Steichen, of acumen as a coach, that's an example in the biggest example necessary in the biggest position that you need it from of him pushing the right buttons.
But here is my retort to that. By doing that, by sending that message, and maybe they lose to Buffalo and Minnesota anyway, you punted 2 games in a season where you're likely going to miss the playoffs by 1 game.
Fair.
Because this talk of Joe Flacco giving you the best chance to win, that was never the case. That was all nonsense.
But what if they thought Flacco had more in the tank? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, then they thought wrong, and then it becomes the wrong decision.
But again,
you know what I mean? Like
this year, though, I know that I'm moving the goalpost here, but it's because I have to keep reminding myself. We said at the beginning of the year, this year was about the development of Anthony Richardson, above and beyond everything else, and maybe it still is.
Yeah, maybe it still is, but nothing in the last 3 the way that I feel. I think this has been a disappointing season overall.
By the way, can I get to my sandwich?
There have been some flashes. Yeah, hold on. There have been some flashes, just like there were flashes in year 1 with Richardson. But I think, the development of Anthony Richardson, adding everything up, I think you have to be this year and dunking on a terrible Giants team or a terrible Jaguars team or a terrible Titans team in these last 3 meaningless weeks isn't going to change that for me.
The sandwich is fabulous.
Yeah, you ready to eat? Wait, hold on. Watch this. All right? Split out.
You never look better.
Let's get to our hoagie friends at Hoagies and Hops, 42nd and Boulevard in Midtown. Disappear. Wait. No. Why did it just disappeared and then wait. Wait, ready? Oh, see? You can't see it? This is cool. I should do this every week. I should just be on the monitor every week.
No, because we only hear every third word you're saying, which is actually kind of nice. By the way,
is my audio messed up?
Yes. I'd like to show off the Santeria, which you got to love it. I mean, how beautiful is this? Santa on the can, perfect for the holidays. You got the family coming over. You just want to relax after the gifts have been opened. What better way to do it than one of the fine ales and lagers? This is the Mexican lager from Chili Water, right next to Hoagies and Hops, right there on Boulevard. It is fabulous. You can get it on draft. Just 100 calories, 7 carbs, the Santeria, one of our favorites. I love a Mexican lager. This is right up there with it. And then, Derek, tell me about the sandwich one more time.
This is the Keystone. So, an elevated roast beef. This is London broil, not just roast beef. A little prove, a little horsey mayo, a little L, a little T, a little O. Really, really good.
Lettuce, tomato, and onion.
Did you warm yours up? You like yours warmed up, don't you? When it's the Keystone?
I did. Who's your hero of the week?
Hero of the week. Give me a second here. Don't rush me. I still have a stomach bug. I gave it a Galen Clark. I don't know why we have to keep doing this. The season's been over for a couple of months now, and she was obviously the Time Athlete of the Year and well-deserved, right? I mean, can you think of somebody that had a bigger impact in sport or was a bigger figure in sport in 2024 than Caitlin Clark? You can't, right? And, of course, that was met with some blowback because everything that she does is met with some blowback, and the Washington Mystics owner had some comments that she felt like it should have been maybe the entire league as the Time Athlete of the Year, which doesn't even make any sense. and I'm paraphrasing here, but can't just focus in on one player. But here's the thing, Jake. You can. Yes, the WNBA, the arrow was pointing up for the WNBA before Caitlin Clark. That is indisputable. Some people don't like that, and some people think Caitlin Clark came in like the white knight and saved everything. No, the trajectory of the WNBA and women's basketball in general was pointing up. It's pointing way up in college basketball. But she came into the league and opened up the floodgates. And it was that singular impact, that led her to be the Time Athlete of the Year. So that doesn't take away from Angel Reese and the spotlight being on her, and she was a big star this year, and that's great. That doesn't take the spotlight away from, I don't know, Asia Wilson or Diana Taurasi or, any of these other greats that have been in the league, MVP champion level players. It's just reality. And I don't know why that's met with so much blowback, and we have to make up these things in our head and pretend like Angel Reese had as big of an impact of Caitlin Clark, or the WNBA itself is a bigger, entity than Caitlin Clark was this year, when it's not steeped in reality. We're trying to guard against hurt feelings. And it's like, I don't really care about if your feelings are hurt. I'm sorry, but that's the reality of the situation.
The only person that was a bigger sports, let me rephrase that. The only person that potentially had the same size splash as Caitlin Clark in Indiana sport in 2024, and Caitlin Clark did a double cannonball from a high dive. This person did a can opener from the low dive. I mean, it's not comparable. But in terms of a splash that this time a year ago was somebody that we were not talking about in Indiana sports that now has burst onto the scene, I don't know that it's going to have the long-term, for a number of factors, effect as Caitlin Clark. But who am I talking about?
Kurt Signetti.
Correct. Nicely done. We didn't even discuss that ahead of time.
Is that your hero?
Well, I'm just saying.
That's your hero of the week?
Yes and no. A lot of that depends on what happens Friday night, which is something that we're going to talk about later on in the show between Indiana and Notre Dame and the college football playoff. But what Kurt Signetti was able to do, he's done two things. Number one, he has put Indiana football on the map. And number two, he has turned up the wick a little bit and the attention on Mike Woodson and the Indiana basketball program from an Indiana fan base standpoint of, look, if you can turn around a football program in a year, why are we still waiting for the basketball program to get going? And we'll talk about that and more, including the Pacers' big one. They got three big ones away from home to try to get things starting to trend in the right direction a little bit. But, does that mean it's going to be something that sticks? We'll get to that. And we will, again, talk college football playoffs coming up in just a little bit on this somewhat remote version of Query and Schultz, and you're watching it on the ISC Sports Network. You look ridiculous. No surprise there at all.
Hey, AC, which games are we going to tonight?
We cover all sports in Central Indiana. Hop in. It's going to be a long night.
Bailey & Wood Mortgage Lender, proud partner of News 8 Sports Hummer.
Hey, AC!
Nice snap.
Mortgage is a snap! Duh!
Bailey & Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Welcome back to Query and Schultz. My name is Jake Query. Apparently, Derek Schultz is not only under the weather, but his internet also... would you quit picking your teeth? You're on camera still.
So are we back? I can't hear the cues because we're not in there. Are we? Is this live?
Yes. You're picking your teeth live. And I realize that and I understand it. Chateau Kitchen's done a wonderful job on your basement, and your basement is beautiful and perfect, but your Wi-Fi in it sucks. So, it would have been nice if you could have moved up to the kitchen, but that's okay. Whatever.
Oh, am I breaking up?
Yeah, it's actually not unlike how the two of us were going to do exactly that in the Atlanta airport, and you made a huge scene, and you yelled into the microphone that we're a couple, we won't be broken up. It was terribly embarrassing.
Not on my watch.
College basketball, Derek, you might have watched it over the weekend. First up, the Indy Classic. Thank you to the folks at Indy Classic for bringing us the hats and jerseys, and it was a great event. I mean, you had Texas A&M and Purdue. You had Butler, Wisconsin. It's always great during the holiday season to have those games at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, ISC, or the the Indiana Sports Court does a great job of putting that on, and it was a great event. For Purdue, we'll begin with that. Reality is this: Texas A&M, a lot like Marquette, long, great defensively. I thought it was a very good matchup. I know that Purdue, obviously, that's one of those that you look at and you go, man, would have been great to get that win. But that is the kind of game that you want to play in December, because they've had two of them now between Marquette and Texas A&M that are really good tests to get set for the Big Ten play and into the NCAA tournament, and everything else. But to me, that was two teams that kind of look in the mirror of just a tenacity between one another and a good game. I know that you'd like to have it if you're Purdue, but I think that, learning how to play without Zach Edey is something that is still a work in progress to a great extent. But their backcourt, I thought, looked good, especially in that first half against Texas A&M, and continuing to kind of show some direction here towards the Big Ten season. Indiana not the same, but we'll start with Purdue. Your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I just thought A&M beat them at their game. A&M played how Purdue wants to play, and you never want to be out physical, out hustled, and all of that. And it felt like that's what happened. A&M shot the ball better than they normally do in that game, but them's the breaks, right? That's a quote-unquote neutral game, but it was 90% Purdue fans, and so that's why it's a game that you'd like. And now you face another neutral game, but it'll be 90% Auburn fans in Birmingham when you take on potentially the best team in the country, Jake, and Auburn coming up this weekend. So it doesn't get any easier for Purdue. I agree with you. I like Matt Painter's non-conference scheduling philosophy. I think it's a lot better than playing, Chattanooga and Winthrop and Miami of Ohio and a bunch of nobodies. But that said, I'm just a little concerned about this particular Purdue team. I think it's kind of an indication of where the Big Ten is, where I think you have a lot of solidly good teams. Like, I think Purdue is solidly a good team. I think Indiana will ultimately be a good team. I still feel that way. I don't think you have any great ones. I don't think you have great ones in the league. I think you've got a bunch of Sweet 16-ish caliber teams, and I think that's where Purdue is firmly slotted. But certainly there's room for growth there.
Derek, certainly the SEC has shown, college basketball has moved swiftly now to what we've seen in the NBA, which is a faster pace, positionless game, wings, length, all those buzzwords. You got it in the SEC. I mean, you watched the way – I thought Tennessee got a really good win at Illinois. Illinois was impressive, I thought, until their last-minute defense was a sieve on the lane. But still, Tennessee's athletic. Auburn is obviously athletic. Alabama, I mean, the SEC right now is – whoever would have guessed this, SEC basketball league, right? But they are clearly right now the best league in college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a similar to what football has been, maybe not as much in the last couple of years, but certainly in the mid 2000s, the 2010s, there was athletic discrepancy, and I think you're seeing that a little bit now, where they got a lot of dudes. Ole Miss, I was impressed, and Ole Miss is probably a team that's going to finish like 5th or 6th in that league, and they've got a bunch of athletes too. So it's a good league. I mean, I haven't been laser focused on the whole, the Big Ten hasn't won a championship since 2000, but it is, you've had a lot more seasons like this one where you just have a bunch of good teams and no great ones than you've had seasons where you've had some truly great teams. And that's been a problem for the conference.
I thought Indiana looked, against Nebraska. I mean, again, you're 8 for 35 from 3-point range. Mackenzie Mbako gets in early foul trouble. You got to have him on the floor. And they kept him out, I thought, too long. Yeah. He never got in rhythm. To your point, Indiana does have the talent, Derek. It is frustrating because kind of what I said about Chris Ballard. I think Mike Woodson has an ability to get good players to come there. Getting them to play cohesively is a totally different story. This is a group that looks like they don't know how to play with one another, and they're going to have to figure it out quickly because they haven't really played anybody effectively in the pre-conference. I mean, when they did play good teams, they got their doors blown off. But now, it's about to get real for them. And to lose 4 straight to Nebraska by an average of 18.5 points per game is a sign of the times, I guess. But it's frustrating with Indiana because they do have talent. But, man, what more can you say? I think the natives are restless, and I think Woodson's going to have to figure it out quickly.
Some guys are just going to have to be a lot better. Notably, Carlisle's going to have to be a lot better. He's just not playing at a good level of basketball right now. And the shooting is a problem once again. Making the pieces fit is a problem once again. But Jake, that was a 68-67 game with what, like 6-7 minutes left, and then you just like collapse into the fetal position. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that, 18-1, I think, is how Nebraska ended that game. It's just wild. So the talent is there for this to be certainly an upper half Big Ten team. And I know that's much lower than the preseason expectations of number 2, but anything less to me, anything less than even making the tournament is a massive disappointment. And at that point, I think you've got to make a coaching change.
Well, listen, Derek, to your point, they do have talent. And the thing that's frustrating is, given the game, they've had different players that have been the best player. They probably have 4 guys that at some point was the best player on the floor for them in a game this year. You had Ballo's had games, and Mbako's had games, Rice has had games, Carlisle's had a couple. But to be able to gel them and consistently do it, that's where coaching comes into play. That's where scheme comes into play. That's where adjustment comes into play. And it doesn't look like they have any of those things. It literally looks like when you go to the Hyper and you see 5 guys playing, and they're all guys from Bloomington North that are probably going to be Division I players, and they're out there playing around. You know that they are athletically superior to whoever they're playing against. But then they go against 5 guys that are on the dorm floors running sets against with one another for 10 months to get ready to go play at the Hyper, and they run circles around them. And that's what Indiana looks like. They just don't. I hate to say it, they don't look well coached. Period. Right?
Yeah, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend I have the answers either, because it's tough when you bring in 4 high-level transfer additions, right?
Every year, though, that's the problem.
Them into a group, yeah, with Galloway and Renew and Mbako and all these guys that have been together for at least a minute, and try to make it all work just kind of on the fly. So it's I'm not making it into an easy thing. This is not an easy thing for Mike Woodson. Just because you get a bunch of talent doesn't mean that it's automatically going to work. But I think it goes back to his NBA background, Jake, where the whole roll the ball out there philosophy, that can work with 25, 26, 27-year-old professional athletes. It's a lot tougher with 19, 20, and 21-year-olds.
Well,
you have to put them,
Derek,
you have to better put them in position to succeed than you do if you're coaching the New York Knicks or the Atlanta Hawks.
But the other thing is this. This is what's frustrating to me. If there is any sort of a scheme, it's an antiquated one. I don't know what they're trying to do offensively, but they have the ability to play at a faster pace, and they're trying to slow it down. And I don't know. They just look like a team that has that, like they're like Brooksy in Shawshank. Like they got out, and the world just is moving a hell of a lot faster than they. That's what Mike Woodson looks like. You know what I mean? I don't know when the world got in such a big damn hurry. That's kind of what it looks like. He's just kind of laissez-faire, and other teams have picked up pace, picked up tempo, and Indiana's sitting there wanting to, run some sort of an offense from 40 years ago, which is weird because he was an NBA coach, and you would think that he would be able to at least assimilate or promote some sort of a faster tempo and adjust, but he hasn't done it, and that's where I think people are like, enough.
They still have a fairly light stretch here. They got 2 more non-league games that they should win. I think they get back into Big Ten play with Rutgers at home. They got to go at Penn State, but you got like USC and Iowa and Ohio State, teams that they should beat that are in there in the early portion of the Big. They don't really get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule until February. That's when they have that, like Michigan, Michigan State, UCLA. They've got their first game at Purdue in there. So I think there's some time here, Jake, for them to kind of accumulate some wins and figure things out, but they're going to have to figure things out.
I'd like to talk about a sports team that's doing some great things right here in town. Why not get right to the Jags report, right? Here's the thing. Just their shirts alone. Work hard, make noise, and have fun. You can actually make noise and have fun by going and seeing the Jags play right here in downtown Indianapolis. The IU Indy Jags. With the Jags report. And I'm not just talking about basketball. I mean, yeah, we have basketball to talk about, but they're doing great things in other sports as well, which leads, by the way, to our Jags report. And keep in mind that Jags tickets are always available at IU Indy Jag. What's the website again, Derek? Hit me here. Come on.
IUindyJags.com/tickets. Why is this so hard for you?
It's not. I just wanted you to say it. I just said.
No, you didn't remember it.
IUindyJags.com/tickets. I knew that. I just put it on the screen. IUindyJags.com/tickets. Say it with me.
Yeah, no, I know Rakestraw, who's putting stuff on the screen. I know he knows what the website is.
IUindyJags.com/tickets.
Okay, great. You got it right. Good
You know
job.
what? Perfect holiday gifts because they're going to have some games coming up at home, especially in basketball, in the jungle, on the campus, right after the new year. But let's get to the Jags report and talk about women's track and field to begin before we get to basketball because they had 13 personal bests. That's right, 13 of them on Friday at the IU Early Bird meet down in Bloomington. Those bests came in the 60-meter dash. Derek, do you run the 60-meter dash?
No.
The 300-meter dash, the 200-meter dash, the long jump, the high jump, and the shot put. So personal bests, PRs all the way around, 13 different events. The IU women's track and field team is off until January 17th, and they are then at the Mastodon Invitational up in Fort Wayne. There we go. IUIndyJags.com/tickets. For basketball as well, by the way, the women's basketball team fell 79-71 against Purdue Fort Wayne. Shania Nichols-Vanette led the Jags with 24 points in that matchup. They take on East Tennessee State on the 20th, North Carolina A&T on the 21st coming up. Those are on the road, though. They're in a tournament. They are back home on the 28th. So, again, want to stocking stuffer surprise somebody? What better way to do it than with tickets to go see the Jags? Division I basketball, local players in action, downtown Indy, IUIndyJags.com/tickets, the 28th for the women. For the men, tough losses over the course of the week. A tough one to Purdue Fort Wayne and then Lindenwood in St. Louis. But Sean Craig did join Paul Zelenskis and Jarvis Walker as players this year who have had Jarius Walker? Sorry. Jarvis, I was right. I can't read my own writing sometimes. Jarvis Walker had 25 this year in a game. So, too, now Sean Craig joins those other two with a 25-point outing this year. They are at Florida International. That's going to be Saturday at 6 o'clock, and they are back home New Year's Day to see Paul Casaro's group, which I love the fact that he is instilling a disciplined style of basketball for IU Indy, getting them set now for league play upcoming January 1st. They will be at home. What better way to kick off the new year than watching the Jags? IUIndyJags.com/tickets is the website.
You want to go the 25th? January 25th?
Yeah, I'll go. We had fun.
It's when they're doing those Metros jerseys.
We've had a lot of fun actually out at the games, right?
Yeah, they're doing the Indy Metros jerseys throwback night on January 25th, and so I thought that'd be a fun night to go.
Sign me up. I'm there. I love it.
All right, cool.
I don't have to go with you, do I?
Up.
Huh?
Yeah, I'll drive. I'll pick you up.
Okay.
So
I'll meet you there.
Probably 6:30ish.
Derek, I may go to
1 o'clock tip, I gotta look the
IUIndyJags.com/tickets and just buy my own ticket, and then I'll just meet you there. Right?
Yeah, just grab me one too, and then I'll drive, and then just let me know when to come get you over at your cheap-bedroom apartment where you live alone.
Unlikely, right?
We come back on the show. Quick hits to get to. We'll touch briefly on the Pacers and the college football playoff, and Chateau Kitchen's Biter Bowl Bleep still to come. It's Corey and Schultz, episode 2 here at ISC Sports Network.
At Bailey and Wood, we pride ourselves on.
Welcome back to Query and Schultz. Jake Query here along with the allegedly ill Derek Schultz, who joins us. I think he was just sleeping in today, but that's fine. Derek, Pacers on the road, and they got a tough one here. They got a tough stretch. But the good news is, you were there on Sunday. You got to put things together. You got to put a string together here. But I do think that having Andrew Nembhard back into the mix and having him with extended minutes, it helps out in multiple areas. I think it helps him defensively. I think it also helps Tyrese Halliburton take the pressure off a little bit in that backcourt. And we're wanting to see the Halliburton of a year ago. I think this facilitates that. Aaron Nesmith's still a big loss for them, but Nesmith is going to be back. It'll be after Christmas before we see him. But my point being, it is still a long way to go, but they at least are starting to show a little bit of sign of the form from a year ago, more so than they were, say, 2 weeks ago. But a big stretch coming up here on the road.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Sixers and Pelicans, right? So they're both terrible. But I think this lull in the schedule is something that they needed a break. They needed kind of a soft reset. And you have 3 games in 12 days, which is, for the NBA, that's a big chance to kind of catch your breath. But you're right, starting Thursday with Phoenix and then a quick California 1-2 with Sacramento and Golden State. It's going to get real here for them coming up. But it does feel like Tyrese Halliburton has very slowly gotten himself back on track. And everything to me, Jake, kind of feeds off. Obi Toppin had a really nice game the other night, and he's not had the greatest start to the season either. So I'm hoping. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I don't want to sound too cliched, but, I wasn't prepared to write the Pacers epitaph on December 1st. You know what I mean, for the season. But clearly they did not get off to the start that they wanted, but there's plenty of time to salvage the season and still make it what they want it to be.
Derek, my one concern remains Jarris Walker. There have been guys that this year, because of attrition, have been given the opportunity to show some minutes. Thomas Bryant, they got him for basically nothing from Miami, and
yeah,
he gave him nice production. But, Jarris Walker is one that I really want to see him break through. And, Johnny Furphy this year has gotten – nobody thought he would get the minutes that he's been getting. I'm not saying that he's obviously going to get relegated back probably out of rotation once everybody's back and healthy. But when he's had opportunity, I think Furphy has shown at times that he is becoming more and more comfortable in understanding his role. Walker, and maybe it's not even necessarily his fault, I don't know that they still know exactly what Jarris Walker's place is, and he certainly doesn't seem like a guy that knows it, because you get a momentary glimpse of something, and then the next 4 rotations through with him, he's just kind of there. And for a guy that was selected, and maybe it's unfair, but for a guy that was selected where he was and how he was, you want to at this point see more from him.
Yeah, I think he's just a lot more raw than any of us had thought. But the Pacers haven't done him any favors by kind of moving him around positionally and being like, okay, you're going to play 4, you're going to play 3, and I think that's been problematic too. But the more that I watch him, Jake, the more that I think, and that's what happens in a lot of cases with these NBA draft picks. Even top 10 ones, they just become guys. Like Jarris Walker might have a 10, 12-year career, but whatever. He's just a guy. He's not like a standout player.
Is Benedict Mathurin
that's what I worry about with him.
Is the other guy top 10 pick? Benedict Mathurin, standout player or just a guy?
God, I still hope so. I'm
Which
more
one?
optimistic that there's something there than with Jarris Walker.
Mathurin, to me, is another one that I think he's a really good player. My concern is that Mathurin and Siakam, Derek, and it's okay to have one of them that this is the case with, but when they're both on the floor together, both of them kind of require the ball to slow down a little bit for them to get into it, to set themselves up for how they like to score. And the Pacers are a team that has been, and last year, separated themselves by playing at pace. And when you get Siakam and you get Mathurin on the floor at the same time, you've got 2 of the 5 guys on the floor that want to slow things down a little bit into a half-court set. Not saying they're not effective, but I don't know necessarily that they're effective with the way that the Pacers schematically want to go.
Yeah, that's fair. And that might be a concern too. But still, big season for Jarris Walker. This is a big season for Ben Mathurin, and I'm just not ready to make any broad declarations yet beyond what I've already said on both of those guys. I'm still far more bullish on Mathurin than I am in Walker. But let's get to our quick hits while we're talking basketball. Rest in peace to the great Dick Van Arsdale, former Manual High School star, IU All-American, 3-time NBA All-Star, passed away at the age of 81. He's the original son, right? He was Phoenix's first selection in the 1968 expansion draft. He had previously spent 3 years with the Knicks. He was named an All-Star in his first 3 seasons with the Suns, spent his last 9 seasons there, averaged 17.5 points a game. He retired as their all-time leading scorer. He's really kind of a Phoenix legend there. And what I've always liked about the Van Arsdales, and we caught up with Tom Van Arsdale. Do you remember that, Jake? Last year of the show, catching up with, we did a long interview with Tom Van Arsdale. How similar their careers were, because obviously they're identical twins, right? But co-Indiana Mr. Basketballs, both All-Americans at IU. Tom had 1,252 points and 723 rebounds at IU. Dick had 1,240 points and 719 rebounds at IU. They were taken back-to-back picks, 13th and 14th in the 65 draft. And in the NBA, Dick had 15,000 points and 3,800 rebounds in 12 seasons. Tom had 14,000 points and 3,900 rebounds, and both played exactly 12 seasons. I mean, it's just crazy.
Amazing.
Like they essentially had the same exact careers.
Derek, here's the thing with the Van Arsdales, and we've talked about this before, but the Van Arsdales, Tom and Dick Van Arsdale, I think, along with the players at Attucks primarily, whether it be Oscar, who was a few years ahead of them, Cleveland Harp, Bailey Robertson, a lot of the great players that came through there, Willie Gardner. Those players during segregated Indianapolis era played basketball at the Dust Bowl, which was the public outdoor basketball court out at Lockfield Gardens, now basically right off of the IUND campus. And that was the black neighborhood of Indianapolis. And the Van Arsdales, along with a guy named Carl Short, I believe was his name, from Manual, they kind of crossed the picket line, if you will. They were the first white players from Manual High School to go into Lockfield and say, we want to play pickup ball. And the players from Addicts are like, okay, I mean, you can play, but you got to wait your turn. And then they played, and they're like, these guys can play. And it allowed that generation of players to realize that basketball was basketball. And if you could play, you could play. And the Van Arsdales didn't worry about the social viewpoint or aspect of going into a black neighborhood to play during segregated Indianapolis. And the black players didn't worry about the fact that the Van Arsdales were white players coming in. They were all just kids wanting to play basketball. I think that went a long way and was a watershed moment in Indianapolis from a social standpoint. So beyond the basketball itself, and their mom being somebody that worked with Bob Knight to raise, lots of money for libraries throughout central Indiana, a great legacy without question for Dick Van Arsdale. Tom obviously survives him, and condolences to all of those within that family and the Manual family as well.
Yeah, two absolute legends of Indiana basketball. No question about that. Did you see this Doug Gottlieb, Adam Schefter thing?
I did. So Gottlieb, who we had on the show when we did a special on the Horizon League, is now at Wisconsin Green Bay. And Adam Schefter had a tweet talking about the money that Michael Vick would be able to get in NIL access at Sacramento State should he become the head football coach there. And Doug Gottlieb pushed back on the amount that Schefter had reported, basically saying that his wording was incorrect. And then Adam Schefter spit back, Derek.
Yeah, he screenshotted his the Horizon League standings, and Green Bay's 2-10. They've lost 7 straight, and kind of clapped back at Gottlieb. I kind of like Doug. I agree with 98. I disagree with 98% of his sports takes, but in this case, I mean, do I believe that Sacramento State has some pledges from people that if they got to FBS that they'd be able to raise a ton of money? Sure. But presenting it as they already have $50 million in tow, come on, man. They do not have $50 million. Maybe over the next 10 years they've got $50 million.
Right.
But I mean, Ryan Day spent $20 million on his roster, and that's Ohio freaking State, not Sacramento State. So I think Schefter could have done a better job in. I get it's a tweet and there's a character limit, the whole deal. I think he could have done a better job in kind of explaining that information, because I agree with Doug. When I first saw that tweet, I was like, "What are you talking about? $50 million in NIL? No way."
It was entertaining. I will say that. It was entertaining. Yeah. And Gottlieb,
it was fun to watch them go.
I like Doug Gottlieb too. He was cool to us. That said, he put himself in a position where if it did not go well for him, and I mean he may turn it around. I don't know what their roster was, but where he put himself in position to be criticized of not being completely focused if his team was not playing well, and right now they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's maintaining his place as a public figure and while coaching. And so, yeah, and he knows he's a big boy. He knows he's opened himself up to all of that. So be interested to see how his tenure plays out there in Green Bay. We got to wrap the show next. We'll do so with Chateau Kitchen's Buy It or Bold Believe. Don't go anywhere. It's Corey and Schultz, ISC Sports Network.
Tonight.
We cover all sports in Central Indiana. Hop in. It's going to be a long night.
Bailey & Wood Mortgage Lender, proud partner of News 8 Sports Hummer.
Hey, AC!
Nice snap.
Mortgages in a snap! Duh!
Bailey & Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Welcome back to Query and Schultz. Derek so much loves his Chateau Kitchen's revamped kitchen and basement and bathroom that he decided not to leave any of them today and is doing the show remotely. But nonetheless, and Derek, we should probably make note for people in terms of the upcoming calendar for our shows during the holidays.
Yeah, so no show next week, and then we will be back as normal. So we're not going to do a show for Christmas week, but we will do a show for for New Year's week on New Year's Eve.
Okay. New Year's
Is that okay
Eve?
with you? I didn't check with you. Is that okay?
Yes. That's fine. That's fine.
Cool.
The show's the highlight of my week. Time for Chateau Kitchens, buy it or Bull Schultz, right?
Yeah, here you can look right here. You can see that this is my basement from Chateau Kitchens. Isn't this nice? So I'm just in one room. Oh, hello. It's in one room of this, so you can see kind of the. We got a microwave and we got a. And
Wait, do you have Derek? Your Wi-Fi's terrible in your basement. Don't move. Don't move. Don't move that. Your Wi-Fi's
my
terrible.
Wi-Fi's doing what? Hello.
It's terrible.
Hello.
You have an oven in your basement?
No, it's a microwave.
Oh, okay. That's
Oven would be
same thing.
irresponsible. It's
Microwave
not
oven.
an oven. It's so much. Yeah, microwave oven, but nobody calls a microwave an oven.
I bet if you look it up, it says it's a microwave oven. That's what it is. It's not a microwave.
I understand
television.
it's like saying television set. Like I know you're 55 years old or whatever. No one says television set anymore.
Nobody says television.
You ready for statement one? We got to get out of here.
All right.
Buy it or bull bleep. The Colts don't have any high-level free agents that they absolutely have to keep.
They have guys that they need to keep. I mean, but it doesn't mean that they have guys that are going to be coveted elsewhere, and so therefore they're going to have to overpay for them. How's that?
I'd like them to keep Dio. The rest of that group, I mean, Ryan Kelly, you're going to move on from, right? Mo Ali Cox, what?
EJ Speed
back, cool.
Isn't EJ Speed up?
Yeah. I think EJ Speed falls into kind of the Bobby Okereke category. Well, I mean, maybe they shouldn't have let him go, right? But that, I'm trying to think. Cato June. There have been other guys that have been good players for the Colts that you've just decided not to give the long-term extensions to, and I would put Speed there.
All right, your next one.
But so I would say, I would say, I would buy it actually. None of those guys were up at night, but I put Dio number one. The Buffalo Bills should be the Super Bowl favorites. Buy it or bull bleep?
Buy it.
Yeah, me too.
Kansas City's a lot of it depends on Mahomes' ankle, right? But they've got to go through Kansas City. That's going to be tough, but they're up there.
But they beat both of them, right? They beat Kansas City and they beat Detroit, so they beat the two best teams in the NFL.
It is.
So I think
I'll tell you what.
to say
big kudos to them. They get rid of their diva wide receiver. Everybody thinks they're going to drop off, and they're better. Josh Allen can play.
No. They've had a great year.
Who's the guy that was high on Josh Allen coming into the draft?
Yeah, okay, you got one right. It's crazy to me, Jake. There's a huge gap between the haves and have-nots. This reminds me of like the NFL in like 2007, 2008, where you had the really good teams at the top and you had some really terrible teams at the bottom, and you've got some horrific teams at the bottom. This is the kind of year.
This year is lining up perfectly for one of those weird fluke Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl runs.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Or somebody of that ilk. Yeah.
Right.
Final one. College football transfer portal should open in January instead of December.
Totally agree. 100%. Because if a team goes to a bowl game and a coach and all that, it's ridiculous.
They're going to move it. I think they're going to move it. I can't imagine they're going to let it go again like this. This is way too chaotic.
It is. That is correct.
The coaches must hate it, right? I mean, think of James Franklin, whatever, like he complains a lot, but I totally agree with his complaints about the portal window. Like they should be focusing on the playoff game, not keeping their backup quarterback on the roster. You know what I mean?
And figuring out who they got to bring in for next year. And yeah.
I mean, come on, give me a break. Thanks to our great sponsors, including our friends right here at Chateau Kitchens. Also wanted to thank Hoagies and Hops and Chili Water Tap Room. Oh, I just realized I didn't put the chili water logo. I'll have to do that for next time. Next time I'm sick and thrown up and it's coming out of the attic in the basement.
Right here with Santa on it.
The IUND Jags, IUNDJag.com/tickets. Presenting sponsors of this show, Bailey and Wood Financial Group. For Jake, I'm Derek. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, the whole deal. And we will talk to you again soon, right here on Corey and Schultz, ISC Sports Network. Good.
At Bailey and Wood, we